When you met me, you commented, and I didn't even notice. I don't hug people.
No.
If I can avoid hugging and contact with anyone, I will avoid hugging and
But you are
contact.
affectionate with me, though.
Yes, you're my wife.
Yes, but you are, but naturally, though, not in a false or fake
But
way.
that was something you said.
Yeah.
You said that when we all had to hug to say goodbye,
Yes.
that I hugged you longer than I hugged
I do
anyone
remember
else.
saying that. I do remember thinking that as like before. You did. The very first time I hugged you, before we even going out, and Lauren was like, everyone hug, group hug. And so we're on the seafront, and you were inadvertently giving hugs to everyone because Lauren was like making it that was the sort of thing you do. I do remember.
So even though I'm uncomfortable with these things,
I do remember
if it's
you
socially
hugging me for longer.
acceptable, if
Yeah.
I know actually this is socially acceptable, it's not like if someone was doing something like trying to grope me or something, clearly I'd know that's not socially acceptable. But if it's socially acceptable, like hugs, even if I don't like it, I join in that social acceptable thing as short as I can because I think, actually, I don't want to be the one that... In those days, I definitely thought I don't want to be the weird one who pushes everyone away every time someone goes to hug me.
Because you didn't know you had Asperger's back then, so you didn't know.
I just didn't want to be
that was the reason behind
too awkward, too weird.
No.
But yeah, so you said that I hugged you longer than...
I did think that. I did think, oh, we hugged me for a bit longer than
But also you've spoken about how I would just be sat on the beach on my own.
Yeah, you often at the end of a long shift, you would just be on the beach for hours, just because we lived opposite the beach at the time, so you would then just be opposite the beach, just chilling out, meditating, whatever it is you were sort of doing there. And
to me, that was the perfect life.
Yeah.
You know, I worked 24-hour shifts.
Yeah.
So I'd go into work at 8 a.m, finish work at 8:30 the next morning, normally not having had any sleep, or if I did, it was an hour or two, because the kids didn't behave particularly well half the time. And I didn't do anything on technology while I was in work, handwritten everything, so all I did was stood around looking after people and handwriting stuff, which isn't particularly
and nowadays
scary.
It's a tech
and then I'd go home, and although I had mobile phones, it was really to make and receive phone calls.
Yeah, very.
It wasn't, and even then I didn't really make the phone calls, so it was more to receive phone calls from people. Even now I don't make phone calls as far as I can.
No.
So it was, and I try not to answer the phone if people phone me. But it was more to receive phone calls if I needed to be contacted. And I think once text messaging came in, I preferred that. So I still got annoyed, I think, if it said, no, that message is, in those days, no, that message is too long. Because before anyone who's watching this that's old, nowadays you can ramble in a text message for ages, and you just press the button, it sends. In those days,
limited character space. You had limited, Twitter, wasn't there?
Yeah, you had limited characters, and I think you could go initially only one set of 140 characters or whatever it was. Then they changed it to you can send, I think, up to 3 text messages that would send jointly. And then if it went to 4, it wouldn't send. And then it was a year later or something, they brought in MMSs, where it would turn it into a picture message instead of a text message. And then they would charge you extra for sending a picture message.
Oh, gosh, They still do sometimes, don't
they? They do charge you for picture messages. But it was like 12p a message or something that you had to pay.
Well, you had 12p. I think mine was like 10p, and they had like a thing on Orange. I remember finding this hack of Orange at the time, that there was a period of time for a while that in the evenings, where like 11 o'clock at night, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. So I don't know if it was something to their signalling system, but all text messages went through free. They didn't charge you, and so I remember texting my friends thinking, "This is great. We can text each other for free because somehow the network isn't charging us." I don't know what happened there, but it was a cool little thing we found out.
But so there were things like that although I got charged for the text messages, and once I became friends with you and Lauren and people like that, suddenly my phone bill. I remember the first month that I was friends with you and Lauren and Cass and all these people. My phone bill went from about £50, I think it was, a month, to, I think my first phone bill when I was friends with all of you guys was 150 quid. Because all of a sudden it's like, Graham wants me to text him, you want me to text you, or I want to text you as well.
We sent text messages to each other at night time, didn't we?
At 12p a time. Cass was having me texting her occasionally, Lauren was having me texting her quite a bit, especially just before we got together. So suddenly I was texting all these people I don't have friends particularly, and I suddenly have all these people who are actually liking me and wanting me to contact them and text them, and obviously most of them have dropped off the radar.
Oh, well, they've had to go on and live their own lives.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're still friends.
Yeah,
they still are on Facebook or whatever. But what I mean is they've dropped off the radar in terms of I don't spend all my time.
But now you've got like the internet anyway to talk for free anyway, so you can go on Twitter and Facebook.
And mobile phone deals are much better now. So I'm pay as you go, and I just pay one flat small fee.
Yeah.
One flat small fee.
We hardly have any friends anyway, so I end up having my stuff rolled over anyway every month because I barely use enough text messages to make it even worth it.
So from a calm point of view, I believe deep down I'm still the same calm Dan that I've always been.
Yeah.
And I believe that in most situations, especially high risk situations, someone pulling a knife out on me or a gun out on me or a fire happening and I'm around or whatever, I'm fine.
Whereas I would be like panicking like no end. Like a normal person probably, I'm not saying you're normal Dan, but you know what I mean, like the average person probably would naturally be panicking in that situation. You're a lot more calmer, which is great because then I know that if you're around,
in an emergency I'll probably be okay.
Lead in that situation.
But I think I'm still the same calm person that still handles those situations calmly.
Yeah.
I think the difference is there's a lot of things that frustrate me now. So I go to my mobile phone and I go to send a text message. There's no signal.
Yeah,
how can there be no signal? I want to send this message, or it automatically logs onto Wi-Fi that it hasn't logged onto. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where it says I've got the Wi-Fi, but it's got the little exclamation mark next to it because you have to do a login process that it's not letting me do, which means I haven't actually properly logged onto it, and yet I can't now use my 4G, and all I want to do is check something on the internet, and I can't use 4G because it's on Wi-Fi, and I don't want it to be on Wi-Fi because it's not really on Wi-Fi, and then that makes me really angry, and so I get these little things that make me really angry, and I get really frustrated, and then you spend most time with me, so you have to brunt it all and put up with my frustrations, and you have to kind of pat me on the head.
But there have been positives though from being diagnosed though. You've written a really, really good book that's been highly received.
Yes, people seem to like it and say it gives them great insight into their kids or whatever.
Yeah. You've done online courses, you've gone and helped other people, you've done articles, magazines and other media outlets that have helped people.
Although newspapers do come up with creative articles, creative headlines, like the ones we've done, where it's like, I married a man with no emotion.
It's like, you have emotion.
And it's, I do have emotion. People with autism do have emotion.
Trust me, this man has emotion.
In fact, my belief is that people with autism experience too much emotion or nothing. So it's either everything's black or white. So it's like other sensory things. I think you're either calm because the environment's not too sensory overload, or there's a sound that's really making you angry and you can't cope with that sound.
Yeah, you don't like the microwave going off, for example, do you?
Or everything's fine, it's a nice dull room and everything's okay, it's not too bad. Or it's too bright, it's hurting your eyes and it's horrible. Or you're walking through town, it's nice and empty and that's fine. Or it's too overcrowded, I'm getting too stressed, I'm bumping into people, everyone's crossing in front of me.
Sort of like
it seems to be all or nothing. And so I believe personally that although it's not written in much of the stuff, literature you can buy on autism, that autistic people are the same with emotion. That we have the same, almost treating it as a sense, we have that same kind of, you can be overwhelmed with emotion and it just floods you and you don't know, it just seems to come out of nowhere, but then it can go equally as quick. So in the same way as I can put headphones on and I suddenly don't care about the noise problem because I can't hear it, or I can put sunglasses on and I don't care about the light because it's not bothering me now, or I can go and sit in a cafe in a corner and it doesn't bother me because I'm in a corner. I can distract myself and the emotion doesn't bother me anymore. It vanishes. Like on our wedding day, I was crying, but by giving my speech, happy crying, completely confused me because I don't understand why I was crying even to this day. But I was crying, but just picking up a glass was enough to make it so that I'm now not focusing on whatever was making me cry. And I stopped instantly. And that's the same, that I can equally be angry about something, but just focus on something completely different and it will stop instantly. So it's all very black and white. It's either all there or nothing there. And that's the same, obviously, with things like death. I've had a few people die, obviously, over the last few years. And I can be crying and feel overwhelmed with crying, even if I don't actually feel something. So I always find it hard to explain, because I don't know what sadness feels like. I can't explain. I just have my face watering. So like with my granddad, I've got the footage of granddad playing piano, and after he died, obviously I could watch that and I would start crying. Not a sad crying, but crying because it's my granddad. But then instantly not watch it, and I'm perfectly fine again.
Yeah,
it's like, so it's not like a grieving where, or how
it's overwhelming
how
and
other
you can't really control it,
But it's not how I see other people grieve. It's not that whole kind of someone cries for a few weeks, where every time they're awake they suddenly get reminded of it. I cry for very small doses.
You get over things quite quickly, don't you, emotionally? Like something could happen and then you sort of...
And
like,
everything's very compartmentalised, I think. So I can be sad when I'm looking at the footage of Grandad.
Yeah.
Or if we want to use the term sad, I don't know what it is, but it's crying.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I turn that footage off, it's like it stops.
Yeah.
It's like I've just pressed an off switch and that emotion's gone. So it's that kind of, that I think is something odd. I find it odd because people don't understand.
And people say, you can't quite describe it, can you?
And people then say, you've got to let it out, you've got to cry, you've got to do this, you've got to grieve in that way. And I find that really difficult because I think, well, I can only do things my natural way. So I do have emotion, and I think, the paper writing, when we did an article together, married a man with no emotion is like, you're just grabbing at a headline that's not true. That's not true, that's actually painting... The article was good. People loved the article, I think. So there were
a lot of insight into how you are and how we are as a couple that they might not known before.
So there were some inaccuracies in it where they were making it like, obviously I've never called someone who's big boned fat.
No, you won't do
as
that.
It says. Technically, I have a bit of a gripe with the idea of it. If someone's big boned, they're not necessarily going to be fat.
No.
So if I had big bones, that's not going to represent as flabby fatness.
No, it's just...
It's going to mean that I'm heavy.
Yeah.
So, which I technically am anyway. I remember it swimming in school and my legs sunk when I was floating on my back and I got dragged under. And they said, that doesn't happen. You're not supposed to get dragged under. You're supposed to lie on your back and float. And yet my legs would be so heavy, they would seem to drag me under the water.
Have you got big bone legs, have you?
Well, big bones would just be dense bones. It wouldn't be, my whole leg isn't a bone. So it would just mean that you're heavy because you've got dense bones. But people that say they're big boned are often
describing someone who's like
fat,
overweight.
And they're saying themselves, "Oh, I'm just big boned." I think, well, no, bone isn't flabby. Bone is rock solid stuff. And so there'd be no reason for me to call a big boned person fat anyway. But I don't go around calling fat people fat.
No.
I don't.
We don't call
I don't insult people for the sake of insulting people.
Like people call me skinny, and I'm like...
I don't go insulting people for the sake of insulting people. And the article kind of read like I go out of my way to be mean to people and insult people. Luckily, the bulk of the article was very positive, but there were these little bits that I thought, that kind of makes it sound like I'm horrible.
For you though, Dan.
Kind of make out that I'm trying to be horrible to people, but yet I don't think I've ever intentionally, to my knowledge, been horrible to anyone. That doesn't mean I don't insult people accidentally or even insult people kind of intentionally, but not in a bad way, but kind of just because I'm being honest about what I'm describing.
Yeah, you don't beat around the bush, you tell it as it is, don't you?
So, obviously I've talked in my book about the girl who asked me out in school and kept asking and asking and asking, and I kept saying no and no and no. And then said, why won't you? And I said, because you look like a horse. And I was being honest.
God, so going to give that girl complex rest of her life.
Yeah. But I wasn't doing it to be horrible. I was doing it because she bluntly asked me, why won't I go out with her? And obviously, in the same way that you will say, what do I look like in this?
True.
You look like... I see old grannies wearing what you're wearing. I'll say it because that is what is in my head.
Yeah, and sometimes I ignore you anyway, and I think I don't care. I like it anyway. I'm going to wear it.
Yeah, but because I'm not trying to insult you, and I'm not trying to say you look like an old granny. I'm just saying the reason I don't like it is because it looks like something old grannies wear.
Yeah,
in the same way that the reason I wouldn't go out with that person is because whenever I saw her, all I thought was, you look like a horse. So I wasn't saying it intentionally to be mean. It was just... But I'm aware as an adult, I wasn't aware at the time, but I'm aware as an adult that she was probably offended by that and upset by that, and it's probably not a nice thing to have said. But it doesn't mean I was trying to be mean to her.
No.
And I think that's the thing that I kind of, obviously from that experience, learned that sometimes, or most of the time, journalists will sensationalise things, but they will focus on Dan has no emotions when I do have emotions, and they'll focus on, Dan insults people for the sake of insulting people, which again I don't do. I would never do that because I do my best to lead a life that's good and hopefully kind to people.
We have quite good moralistic, we always try to be polite and kind and well-mannered, thoughtful, respectful to people, stand
and
up
I hold doors for everyone.
You do, you very often, quite often I'm like, oh, Dan's coming, he's just behind me, and I look and there's like 20 people going through the door because he's standing there holding it open for them.
Yeah. No one ever says thank you.
No.
It's very rare, but I will still hold it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you don't get praise, you still do the right thing.
Yeah.